The massive crystal walls of the Galactic Council chamber reflected Princess Kira's pale face as she stood before the assembled representatives. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the data pad containing her people's death sentence. The Villani homeworld had exactly 72 hours before the Draknari Empire would arrive with their war fleet. Honored council members, Kira began, her voice steady despite her fear. I come before you today not as royalty, but as a daughter watching her people face extinction. The chamber held representatives from 47 different species. Some floated in specialized atmospheric bubbles, others sat on platforms designed for their unique body structures. All of them avoided her gaze. Ambassador Zeth of the Korean Federation finally spoke. His blue skin seemed to darken with discomfort. Princess Kira, we understand your situation is difficult. However, the Draknari Empire has made their position clear. They claim your world illegally mines crystals from disputed territory. Those crystals have been our heritage for thousands of years, Kira replied. Our ancestors discovered them long before the Draknari even had space travel. We have documents proving our claim. Documents the Draknari refuse to acknowledge, said Chancellor Vox, her mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. They have declared this a territorial dispute. The Council cannot intervene in such matters without risking galactic war. Kira's heart sank. She had traveled 3 weeks to reach the Council station, hoping against hope that the galaxy's governing body would help. Instead, they were abandoning her people to save themselves from Draknari wrath. So you will let them destroy an entire civilization? She asked. The silence that followed was her answer. Ambassador Zeth shifted uncomfortably. Princess, we suggest you negotiate directly with the Draknari. Perhaps some arrangement can be reached. Kira almost laughed. The Draknari didn't negotiate. They conquered. Their empire had swallowed 12 worlds in the past 5 years alone. Each time, they found legal excuses that kept the Council from interfering. As the session ended and representatives filed out, Kira stood alone in the vast chamber. Her last hope had crumbled. In 72 hours, the Draknari fleet would arrive. Her people had no weapons capable of fighting such a force. The Villani were scholars and artists, not warriors. Excuse me, Princess. Kira turned to see a human approaching. She had noticed the Earth delegation earlier, sitting quietly in the back rows. This man was of average height with brown hair and calm green eyes. He wore simple clothes that seemed almost primitive compared to the advanced fabrics of other species. I am Ben, he said with a slight bow. I represent Earth in these proceedings. I know who you are, Kira replied, though truthfully she had paid little attention to the human delegation. Earth was a minor world that had only recently achieved space travel. They rarely spoke during council sessions. I couldn't help but overhear your situation, Ben continued. I may have a solution. Kira studied his face. Humans were known for their unpredictable ideas, though most other species considered them more curious than useful. What kind of solution? Marriage, Ben said simply. Kira blinked. I beg your pardon. Ancient galactic law, specifically the Intergalactic Peace Accords, Section 847, Ben explained. Any world whose royal family has marriage ties to an off-world species gains automatic protection status. The law was created thousands of years ago to encourage peaceful alliances between species. I know the law, Kira said slowly. But it hasn't been used in centuries. And it would require marriage to someone from a council-recognized species. Earth was granted council membership 6 months ago, Ben reminded her. Our species qualifies. Kira stared at him. You're suggesting I marry you? A complete stranger? To save your people, yes. Ben's expression remained calm. I understand it's not ideal, but it would legally protect your world from Draknari invasion. Even they respect the old treaties. Why would you do this? Kira asked suspiciously. What does Earth gain? Ben was quiet for a moment. My home has faced extinction before. We know what it means to fight for survival. If I can help prevent that for another world, I will. Kira felt a flicker of hope. Even if this works, the Draknari won't give up easily. They'll find another way. Perhaps, Ben agreed. But it would give your people time to prepare or find other solutions. Time. That was exactly what her people needed. Kira made her decision. Very well, she said. I accept your proposal. The wedding ceremony took place 36 hours later via quantum communication link. Kira stood in the royal temple on Villani Prime while Ben participated from the council station. The entire event felt surreal and cold. She spoke vows to a man she barely knew, binding their fates together through ancient words transmitted across space. Her father, King Aldrich, watched the ceremony with mixed emotions. I pray you have made the right choice, daughter, he said afterward. I pray we all have, Kira replied. The marriage certificate was immediately filed with the council registry. Within hours, it had been transmitted to every major power in the galaxy, including the Draknari Empire. Ben arrived on Villani Prime 2 days later aboard a simple Earth transport ship. Kira waited at the landing platform, still struggling to believe she was now married to this quiet human. She had spent the intervening time researching Earth and its people, learning about their recent emergence into galactic society. Earth was what galactic scientists called a death world, a planet with extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, and unstable geology. Somehow, humans had not only survived but thrived in such conditions. They were known for their adaptability and determination, though most other species considered them rather primitive. Ben stepped off his ship carrying only a small bag. He moved with easy confidence, his eyes taking in the crystal spires and floating gardens of the Villani capital city. It's beautiful, he said to Kira. Your people have created something truly remarkable here. Thank you, Kira replied formally. I'll show you to your quarters. The palace had been prepared for Ben's arrival. He was given rooms in the East Wing, far from the royal family's private chambers. Kira had made it clear this was a political arrangement, not a romantic one. Ben seemed perfectly content with these arrangements. He spent his first days exploring the palace gardens and asking detailed questions about Villani agriculture. The servants found him polite but strange. Unlike most off-worlders, he showed genuine interest in their daily work. He asked me about soil composition for an hour yesterday, reported Mira, one of the garden keepers. He wanted to know how we grow food in crystal-infused ground. Kira found Ben's behavior puzzling. Most aliens who visited their world were interested in their technology or artistic achievements. Ben seemed fascinated by the most basic aspects of Villani life. She watched him from her office window as he worked alongside the garden staff. He had rolled up his sleeves and was helping to plant new seedlings. His movements were precise and efficient, and she noticed how the plants seemed to respond well to his touch. He's not what I expected, King Aldrich commented, joining his daughter at the window. What did you expect? Kira asked. Someone more ambitious. Most species would see marriage into our royal family as an opportunity for power or wealth. He seems genuinely interested in learning about our world. This was true. Ben had made no requests for special privileges or access to Villani technology. He ate simple meals with the servants rather than demanding royal banquets. His only request had been for a small workspace where he could study local plants. One evening, Kira found Ben sitting in the garden as the 3 moons rose overhead. He was writing in a paper journal, an almost primitive practice compared to digital recording devices. What are you documenting? She asked. Growth patterns, Ben replied, looking up from his notes. Your plants here have adapted to some fascinating conditions. The crystal formations in the soil create unique mineral absorption patterns. Kira sat on a nearby bench. Is agriculture your profession on Earth? Among other things, Ben said. On my world, most people learn multiple skills. You have to be adaptable to survive. What other skills do you have? Ben considered the question. I can build shelters, predict weather patterns, track animals, basic medical training. He paused. Combat training, though I prefer not to use it. The last edition surprised Kira. Ben seemed so peaceful and gentle. She couldn't imagine him fighting. All humans learn combat, she asked. Most do. Earth can be dangerous. We learn to defend ourselves and our communities. Before Kira could ask more questions, her personal communicator chimed with an urgent message. Her blood went cold as she read it. What is it? Ben asked, noting her expression. The Draknari, she said. They've found a loophole. Within the hour, the Royal Council had assembled in the emergency chamber. The Draknari message played on the main screen, delivered by their commander, a massive reptilian figure with scarred armor. Greetings, Villani scum, the commander snarled. Your marriage trick has bought you time, but nothing more. We invoke the ancient trial of worthiness. If your human mate proves unworthy in combat, the marriage becomes void under galactic law. King Aldrich's face went pale. The trial of worthiness. I had forgotten about that provision. What does it mean? Ben asked calmly. Single combat, Kira explained, her voice barely a whisper. You would face a Draknari champion. If you lose, our marriage is declared invalid, and they can proceed with their invasion. And if I win? They must withdraw permanently and acknowledge our territorial claims, said the king. But Ben, you don't understand. Draknari warriors are bred for combat. They're 3 times the size of a human, with natural armor and 4 arms. No one has ever defeated a Draknari champion in single combat. Ben nodded thoughtfully. When would this trial take place? They're demanding it happen within 7 days, Kira said. Ben, I can't ask you to do this. It would be suicide. You're not asking, Ben replied. I'm choosing. The council chamber fell silent. Everyone stared at the quiet human who had just agreed to face certain death. I'll need to send word to my people, Ben continued. And I'll require some time to prepare. Prepare how? Asked General Vax, the king's military advisor. There are no weapons that could help you against a Draknari warrior. I wasn't thinking of weapons, Ben said. Over the next 3 days, Ben's behavior became even more puzzling. He spent hours in physical training, but not in any way the Villani understood. Instead of practicing with weapons, he meditated. Instead of building muscle, he worked on balance and flexibility. He asked for detailed information about Draknari anatomy and fighting techniques. He's studying their weaknesses, Kira told her father. What weaknesses? The king replied. They have natural armor plating and 4 arms. They've conquered half the galaxy. Meanwhile, word of the upcoming trial spread throughout the galactic community. Representatives from dozens of species requested permission to attend, eager to witness what many assumed would be humanity's humiliation on the galactic stage. The Draknari champion arrived 2 days before the trial. His name was Gorak, and he stood 8 feet tall with dark green scales and battle scars covering his armor. He had never lost a combat trial in 23 victories. His presence on Villani Prime sent waves of terror through the population. He's massive, Kira said, watching the champion's arrival on the news feeds. Ben, Please reconsider. There must be another way. But Ben seemed strangely calm. He had spent the morning in the garden again, tending to the plants as if nothing unusual was happening. Your people grow food in harsh conditions, he observed. They've learned to adapt and persist. That's a valuable skill. This isn't about gardening, Kira said, frustrated by his apparent lack of concern. You're going to die tomorrow. Ben looked at her with those steady green eyes. Princess, may I tell you something about my people? What? We're survivors. We've faced ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and wars. We've been to the edge of extinction multiple times. But we're still here. The Draknari are different from natural disasters. Are they? Ben asked. They're just another challenge to overcome. That evening, the trial arena was prepared in the palace courtyard. Seating was arranged for the hundreds of galactic observers who had arrived. The combat area was marked by energy barriers that would contain the fight while allowing spectators to watch safely. Kira couldn't sleep. She found herself walking the palace halls, dreading the morning. She had married Ben to save her people, but she was about to watch him die for them. The guilt was overwhelming. She found Ben in the garden again, sitting quietly under the starlight. Aren't you afraid? She asked. Of course, he replied. Fear is natural. But fear doesn't change what needs to be done. I'm sorry, Kira said. I'm sorry I brought this on you. Ben stood and faced her. Princess, you made a choice to save your people. That takes courage. Tomorrow, I'll make my choice. Whatever happens, your people will survive. That's what matters. As dawn approached, the arena filled with spectators. Camera drones from news networks across the galaxy positioned themselves for optimal viewing angles. The Draknari delegation occupied the place of honor, confident in their champion's certain victory. Ben entered the arena wearing simple cloth training clothes and carrying only a metal staff he had fashioned himself from materials found in the palace workshop. He looked impossibly small compared to the massive arena and the crowd of alien spectators. Gorak entered from the opposite side, his 4 arms carrying various weapons. His natural armor gleamed in the morning light, and his reptilian features were set in a permanent snarl. The crowd fell silent as the 2 combatants approached the center of the arena. Human, Gorak rumbled in galactic standard. You face your death with honor. I will make it quick. Ben simply nodded respectfully. The trial referee, a neutral council official, stepped forward. By ancient law and galactic tradition, this trial of combat will determine the validity of the royal marriage between Princess Kira of Vellani Prime and Ben of Earth. Combat continues until one participant yields, becomes unable to continue, or dies. Are both champions prepared? Both fighters indicated their readiness. Begin. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. Gorak moved first, as everyone expected. The massive Draknari champion charged forward with devastating speed, his 4 arms swinging weapons in coordinated attacks that would have crushed any normal opponent in seconds. The crowd gasped as the 8-foot warrior bore down on the small human. Ben simply wasn't there when the attacks arrived. Instead of meeting force with force, Ben flowed around Gorak like water around a stone. He moved with fluid grace, his body seeming to bend in impossible ways as massive fists and weapons swept through empty air where he had been standing moments before. The crowd murmured in surprise. They had expected the human to be crushed immediately. Instead, he was making Gorak look clumsy. What is he doing? Princess Kira whispered to her father. King Aldrich watched intently. He's studying his opponent. This was exactly what Ben was doing. As Gorak continued his assault, Ben observed everything. He noted which arm moved fastest, how Gorak shifted his weight before attacking, the pattern of his breathing, the slight hesitation when switching between weapons. Ben's mind catalogued every detail with the precision of a hunter tracking prey. Gorak grew frustrated. "Stand and fight, coward." Ben didn't respond with words. Instead, he began to strike back. His metal staff moved in precise arcs, finding gaps in Gorak's armor that shouldn't have existed. Each hit was perfectly placed on nerve clusters and joint connections. None of the strikes seemed powerful enough to hurt the massive warrior, but Gorak's movements began to slow slightly. The Draknari in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Their champion was supposed to dominate this fight, but the human was making him work harder than anyone expected. "Impossible," muttered Commander Scar, the Draknari fleet leader. "Our warrior has natural advantages in size, strength, and armor. How is this human matching him?" Ambassador Zeth from the council delegation leaned forward. "The human isn't matching him. He's learning him." This observation proved accurate. As the fight continued, Ben's movements became more confident. He began to anticipate Gorak's attacks, stepping away from strikes before they were fully committed. When Gorak tried a new combination of moves, Ben adapted instantly, flowing into defensive patterns that seemed almost choreographed. But the real surprise came when Gorak began to tire. Draknari were powerful fighters, but their species relied on overwhelming opponents quickly. Their massive muscles and heavy armor required enormous energy to maintain. After 15 minutes of constant combat, Gorak's attacks grew slightly slower. Ben showed no signs of fatigue whatsoever. "How is this possible?" King Aldrich asked General Vax. "The Draknari should have superior endurance." "Not compared to humans," said Dr. Elena, Earth's scientific advisor who had arrived with Ben's transport. She had been quietly observing from the Earth delegation section. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We can maintain physical activity for hours without rest." This was becoming evident in the arena. While Gorak's breathing grew heavier, Ben moved with the same fluid grace he had shown at the fight's beginning. His strikes remained precise and targeted. If anything, he seemed to be getting stronger as the battle progressed. The crowd began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. No species had ever outlasted a Draknari warrior in single combat. The reptilian champions were legendary for their stamina as well as their strength. Gorak changed tactics, drawing a massive sword that required two of his arms to wield effectively. He began using sweeping attacks designed to prevent Ben from getting close. The strategy seemed sound: keep the human at a distance and use superior reach to control the fight. Ben adapted again. He changed his fighting style completely, using his staff like a spear to thrust at vulnerable points from outside the sword's range. When Gorak adjusted his grip to counter these attacks, Ben shifted again, now fighting like he carried twin daggers, getting inside the sword's reach to strike at close range. "He's using at least 4 different fighting techniques," observed Captain Roth, a military expert from the Centauri Republic. "Each one perfectly suited to counter Gorak's current strategy." "How many fighting styles do humans know?" asked Ambassador Zeth. Dr. Elena smiled grimly. "All of them. Humans have been fighting for survival since we first walked upright. We've developed every conceivable way of combat because our lives depended on it." The tide of battle was shifting noticeably. Gorak's attacks, while still dangerous, were becoming predictable. Ben had analyzed his opponent's patterns so thoroughly that he could counter almost any move. Worse for the Draknari champion, his energy reserves were depleting rapidly while Ben seemed capable of fighting indefinitely. 25 minutes into the trial, Gorak made his first serious mistake. Frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow, he overextended on a powerful swing. Ben flowed around the attack and struck 3 nerve clusters in rapid succession. Gorak's left arm went temporarily numb. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. No one had ever seen a Draknari warrior injured by such light strikes. How did he do that? Princess Kira asked in amazement. Pressure points, Ben called out, his voice carrying clearly across the arena despite the ongoing fight. Every species has them. Your anatomy texts were very helpful, Princess. Kira realized Ben had spent his preparation time studying Draknari physiology, mapping their nervous system and identifying vulnerabilities. He hadn't been training to overpower his opponent, he had been learning how to disable him. Gorak roared in anger and pain. He switched to fighting one-handed while sensation slowly returned to his numbed arm. But Ben had identified a weakness, and he pressed his advantage ruthlessly. His strikes became more aggressive, targeting specific points that would cause maximum disruption with minimal force. This is not possible, Commander Scar said, his voice tight with disbelief. Gorak has defeated champions from 17 different species. He cannot be losing to a primitive human. But he was losing, and everyone could see it. The massive warrior's movements were becoming increasingly erratic. His breathing was labored, and sweat dripped from his scaled hide. Ben, meanwhile, moved with mechanical precision, exploiting every opening and creating new ones when none existed. The psychological aspect of the fight was devastating Gorak as much as the physical. He had been trained from birth to believe Draknari were superior warriors. The idea that this small, seemingly weak human could outfight him was breaking down his mental defenses along with his physical ones. 30 minutes into the trial, Ben demonstrated another human advantage that stunned the watching galaxy. Gorak managed to land a glancing blow that sent Ben rolling across the arena floor. The crowd thought the fight might finally be over. Instead, Ben rolled smoothly to his feet and resumed fighting as if nothing had happened. The strike that should have broken ribs or caused serious injury seemed to have no effect whatsoever. Humans are incredibly durable, Dr. Elena explained to the amazed observers around her. Our bone density and muscle structure evolved to handle falls, impacts, and injuries that would cripple most other species. We're built to take damage and keep fighting. This resilience was the final blow to Gorak's confidence. He had landed what should have been a fight-ending strike, and his opponent simply shrugged it off. The psychological impact was crushing. Ben sensed the shift in his opponent's mental state and pressed his advantage. His attacks became more coordinated, striking multiple pressure points in sequence to create cascading nerve failures. Gorak's coordination began to break down entirely. "Yield," Ben said quietly, his voice cutting through the arena's noise. "You fought with honor, but this is over." Gorak's response was a desperate charge, using all four arms in a final attempt to overwhelm his opponent. It was exactly the wrong choice against someone who had been studying his patterns for 35 minutes. Ben moved through Gorak's assault like he was dancing. Every strike missed by millimeters, and Ben's counterstrike hit a nerve cluster at the base of Gorak's neck. The massive warrior's legs gave out, and he crashed to the arena floor, paralyzed but conscious. The arena fell completely silent. For a moment, the only sound was Gorak's labored breathing and the hum of the energy barriers containing the combat area. Ben knelt beside his fallen opponent, checking for serious injuries with practiced efficiency. "The paralysis is temporary," he announced. "Feeling should return within an hour." He helped position Gorak more comfortably and began treating a cut on the Draknari's arm with supplies from a medical kit that had been part of the arena equipment. "Why?" Gorak asked weakly, confused by this kindness from his conqueror. "Because the fight is over," Ben replied simply. "You're no longer my enemy. You're someone who needs help." This act of mercy sent shockwaves through the watching crowd. Most species considered defeated enemies either irrelevant or potential threats. The concept of providing aid to someone who had just tried to kill you was almost incomprehensible to many of the observers. The trial referee approached cautiously. The combat is concluded. Ben of Earth is victorious by virtue of his opponent's incapacitation. The marriage between Princess Kira of Villani Prime and Ben of Earth is declared valid and binding under galactic law. Commander Scar stood slowly in the Draknari viewing section. His face showed a mixture of shock, anger, and something that might have been respect. By the ancient codes, we acknowledge the trial's outcome. The Draknari Empire withdraws all claims to Villani Prime. The crowd erupted in stunned conversation. Representatives from dozens of species spoke rapidly into communication devices, reporting the unprecedented outcome to their home worlds. The implications were staggering. Princess Kira rushed onto the arena floor, her royal composure forgotten. Ben. Are you hurt? I'm fine, Ben assured her, though she could see exhaustion in his eyes for the first time since the fight began. Your people are safe now. How did you do that? She asked, looking between Ben and the still paralyzed Gorak. No one defeats Draknari champions. It's never happened before. Every species has strengths and weaknesses, Ben replied. Draknari are powerful and tough, but they're not adaptable. They fight the same way every time because it usually works. Humans survive by being adaptable. Dr. Elena joined them on the arena floor. What Ben isn't telling you is that he just demonstrated about 15 different human advantages that most of the galaxy doesn't know we possess. Such as? King Aldrich asked, approaching with the royal guard. Persistence hunting abilities that let us outlast any prey. Pattern recognition skills that allow us to learn and counter enemy tactics during combat. Durability that lets us absorb damage that would disable other species. Nerve strike techniques developed over thousands of years of martial arts. And most importantly, the psychological makeup that lets us stay calm and analytical under extreme pressure. Commander Scar had approached as well, his massive form casting a shadow over the group. Human, he said to Ben, you have fought with honor and skill. The Draknari Empire would be interested in learning more about your people's capabilities. For peaceful purposes, I hope, Ben replied carefully. Indeed. Today has taught us that humanity may be more valuable as allies than adversaries. Over the following hours, as news of the trial spread across the galaxy, Earth's status in galactic politics underwent a dramatic transformation. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers suddenly wanted to establish diplomatic relations. Military leaders requested information about human combat training methods. Scientists sought to study human physiology and endurance capabilities. Princess Kira found Ben in the palace garden that evening, tending to plants as if the day's events had been perfectly ordinary. The Galactic Council wants to invite Earth to join the Security Committee, she told him. 3 different species have requested military training exchanges. The Centauri Republic is offering technology sharing agreements. That's good, Ben said, carefully watering a young crystal fruit tree. Earth could use more friends in the galaxy. Is that why you agreed to marry me? Kira asked. To raise humanity's galactic profile? Ben looked up from his gardening. I told you the truth before. My people have faced extinction. We know what it means to fight for survival. When I saw your people facing the same threat, I wanted to help. But you knew you could defeat their champion, Kira pressed. You knew humans were more capable than other species realized. I knew it was possible, Ben admitted. Humans are good at adapting to challenges. But victory was never guaranteed. Gorak is a skilled warrior. Under different circumstances, the outcome might have been very different. Kira sat on a nearby bench, studying her husband's face. You're not like what I expected when I first met you. What did you expect? Someone more ambitious. Most beings would use a victory like today's to demand power or recognition. You're here watering plants. Ben smiled slightly. Power and recognition don't grow food or cure diseases or explore new worlds. Those things are more interesting to me than politics. Even though today's victory will probably make Earth one of the most respected worlds in the galaxy. That's good for my people, Ben agreed. But my job is done. Earth's diplomats and leaders can handle galactic politics better than I can. I'm better with growing things. As if to prove his point, the plant he was tending seemed to straighten under his careful attention, its leaves becoming more vibrant. Ben, Kira said carefully, our marriage began as a political arrangement. But after today, after seeing what you did to save my people, I want you to know that you're welcome to stay here as long as you wish. As my husband, if you're willing, or simply as an honored friend if you prefer. Ben looked up from the plant, meeting her eyes. What would you prefer? I'd like to get to know the man who risked his life for strangers, Kira said honestly. I think there's more to learn about humans than just their fighting abilities. There is, Ben agreed. We're pretty good at growing things too. They sat together in the garden as Villani Prime's 3 moons rose overhead. Around them, the crystal spires of the capital city glowed softly in the moonlight, and in the distance, the lights of Draknari's ships could be seen departing the system forever. The trial had ended, but its effects would ripple across the galaxy for years to come. Humanity had announced itself as a force to be respected, and Ben had shown that sometimes the greatest strength came not from overwhelming power, but from the ability to adapt, endure, and find solutions where others saw only problems. In the days that followed, as the galaxy adjusted to this new understanding of human capabilities, Ben continued tending the palace gardens. But now Princess Kira often joined him, learning about Earth plants and sharing stories of their respective worlds. The marriage that had begun as a desperate political gambit was slowly becoming something neither of them had expected, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. And in the background, as representatives from across the galaxy arrived to establish relations with Earth, the human species began its true integration into galactic civilization. Not as the primitive newcomers they had been assumed to be, but as the survivors of a death world who had evolved to overcome any challenge through determination, adaptability, and the simple refusal to give up. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.